Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, or good morning, or good day, whichever applies to you, or good evening. I'm Susie Tierney. I'm the director of Just Faith Ministries, and I'm excited to be with all of you today to share a little bit about equipping and mobilizing your congregation for justice. This is a presentation I've done for years. There's going to be some basics in here, but also some tips and tools that I hope will be helpful to those of you that have been doing this work for some time. So with that, I have been testing my slide presentation, and we're going to pray and hope it works. But let me share my screen and we will be off and running. All right. And there we are. So what are we going to cover here today? Today's agenda, I'm first going to define what an effective social justice ministry actually looks like. And part of that definition is what it doesn't look like. So I'm going to share a few of those things. And then I'm going to go through some key questions for developing and planning social justice ministry efforts and activities in your church. Then I'm going to share some common ruts and potholes to effective social justice ministries, and to effective social justice ministry, and then some potential solutions. And then I'm going to provide you with some resources and some. Hopefully, we'll have time for some questions at the end. Before I go too much further, for those of you who like to take vigorous notes, I also wanted to let you know that this slide presentation and this resource and the resource packet that I'm going to share at the end are going to be available in our Just Faith Ministries Expo booth. So you just need to go to our booth on the Excellence platform, and you'll be able to find all of the slides that I'm sharing today, as well as the resource booklet that might come in very handy. And so away we go. So what does effective social justice ministry look like? When I sat down first to think about how I would present this, and this was years ago, 20 years ago, I first had to come up with a definition. So if I had to capture everything in a sentence or two, here's what I would say about effective social justice ministry. I would say it's a small group of spiritually or scripturally rooted individuals who meet regularly together to breathe life into our scriptural call to work for justice, educating themselves and the larger parish or congregation about injustices or inequities in the local, national, and or global community, and facilitating opportunities to engage and inspire the whole church through relationship building and advocacy for structural change rooted in solidarity. Now that is two mouthfuls, not just one. And so the first part of this presentation is going to be going through each one of the underlying pieces of this so you can get a sense of what I'm talking about. But more simply, I thought I'd just present a couple of much more simpler and key definitions. I bring you Love with Its Work Boots On from Sherry Darlington, or What Love Looks Like in Public from Cornell West. That's what effective social justice ministry really is. So aspects of social justice ministry, I said small group. Really, you only need 8 or 12 committed individuals led by 2 co-facilitators, ideally with some basic facilitation skills, in order to have an effective social justice ministry. Some people think you need droves and tons and tens of hundreds of people. But I just remind you of Margaret Mead's quote that never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. And when we talk about social justice ministry, what we're talking about is a small group that's going to facilitate social justice ministry for your whole church. And so it starts with a small group and a couple of people with some basic facilitation skills who are willing to facilitate. Some tips for inviting people to the small group. Personal invitations. I don't have to tell anybody on this in this Zoom meeting that personal invitations are always the most effective way of inviting people into the ministry. Um, Doing a Just Faith Ministries program or one of our other Just Faith Ministries programs. I'm the director of Just Faith Ministries, and so a disclaimer, but also I'm also a former staff member at a church, and I've not seen anything as effective as our Just Faith Ministries programs at cultivating and educating a small group of people who and inspiring and equipping them to bring people into the larger mission and vision of social justice. Certainly using our Just Faith program as a way to do that. Inviting other congregational teams or committees to identify a liaison to your social ministry team or committee. Wouldn't it be something if your music ministry and your pastoral council and or your vestry or whoever your committee was, your church leadership group, if all of your different ministries actually had a liaison to your justice committee work, because it is the work of the whole church. And so that's, if you come away with anything today, I want to emphasize that it's not the work of a small group, but it is the work of the whole church. And then, of course, using your church communications, your worship services or masses, and your coffee hours to engage people. Rooted in prayer and scripture, that was a part of that definition. The most effective parish or congregation social justice ministry committees or teams ground their efforts in prayer and scripture and make it a central part of all meetings. I think those of us in church ministry can fall into the habit of doing what I call a quick read at the beginning or a quick read at the end. You know, the tendency is to let's do a quick prayer and then we'll get on with our meeting. But I would argue that that social justice ministry and advocating for people's basic human needs and structural change is one of the most important things that we could possibly do. And so to have some dedicated time in a meeting to actually root that conversation in prayer, in our scriptural call, and then in some faith sharing is a key aspect of good and effective social justice ministry. We have to constantly ground ourselves in why this is ours to do, as Marie and Catherine stated so well in the opening plenary. Focused on formation and education. The most effective social justice committees or teams educate and form themselves first, and then they bring the education and formation to the larger congregation. So it's incumbent on small groups of teams or social justice teams or social mission teams or committees, whatever your name for your committee or team is, that you educate and ground yourselves first before bringing something to the larger congregation or parish. It's just a key to effective social ministry again. That you address local, but are also aware of global. So the most effective social justice committees or teams plan educational opportunities or projects or events with an awareness both of the needs in the local community and how those needs and the decisions that impact those needs are also going to affect the larger national and global community. There's this great phrase, and I've tried to find credit this one, but think globally, act locally. So our best efforts can often be acting locally, and those best efforts can often turn into implications for the larger national and global community. Another aspect of social justice ministry, facilitating efforts that engage and empower the larger congregation or parish. So the most effective social justice committees or teams, again, are not solo actors. They work to engage the whole church in the work of justice, in the work of addressing the systemic issues that are making it impossible for people to meet their basic human needs, making our planet unsettled and exploited, and making adding to violence and militarism. The best and most effective social justice committees are bringing their whole church into this. The most effective social justice committees equip and inspire others for action. Again, the work of a social justice ministry team or committee isn't just to educate a church or congregation or parish, but also to equip and inspire the church to address an iniquity or an injustice. So part of that work is not just education, but inspiring and equipping as well. And then one of the final aspects of that I've pulled out of working effective social justice ministry is working in solidarity with the people that are affected by the issues that you are addressing or the injustices that you are seeing around you. Committees or teams that stand with those experiencing injustice and engaging in their efforts. They don't help or do for, but they engage in a way that supports the efforts that are already happening amongst the people who are experiencing injustice or marginalization. This is really incredibly important. Our racial justice, one of our board members and racial justice consultants for Just Faith Ministries has shared this phrase with me. Some of you maybe have heard this phrase, nothing about us without us. And so the work of social justice ministry shouldn't happen without the people who are affected by the issue involved in the conversation. And so that's a key aspect of social justice ministry. And also a key aspect of social justice ministry is that the committee work and the team work is hopeful and even fun sometimes. Committees or teams have to believe in the power to change our communities and the world, and ensure that there is an occasional fun built into the work. I promise you that generally people around you will pick up easily if you are not being authentic about something, and people will know if you don't believe what you're saying. And so really we have to be incredible optimists in this work. Those of us who are Christian, we have to be people who believe in the resurrection, who believe that death was not the last word, and our work is steeped in the hope that an end to world hunger is possible, an end to world poverty is possible, and an end to world violence is also possible. What social justice teams or committees are not? They are not the do-gooders of the church. They are not people with an axe to grind. They are not the church activist. They are not the Democratic Party caucus. That can be tempting, I know, but not the Democratic Party caucus. Not the hospitality committee either. There is a role for a hospitality committee, certainly in a church, but the social justice ministry is not the hospitality committee. A therapy group for the bitter and cynical, certainly not that. One of the most disheartening things that I see with people who are doing this work of social mission and social justice is how easy it can be to get cynical and pessimistic. And but social justice ministry again is hopeful and optimistic. Social justice committees are not violent in word or speech, and certainly not discriminatory or biased. So I'd invite people, if you have a social justice ministry, which of the previous knots does your team or committee fall into? And what other knots would you add? I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a second so I can see if I can see some of the chat responses. Any knots that your social justice committee has fallen into, or any that you would add? And yes, Sister Rose, the slides will be available, and I'll mention that again at the end of the presentation. But um, activists, they would be activists, I think. Ruth, thank you for answering. Well, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna keep sharing, and we'll see if we can get another. I can get you engaged in another. Uh, Not doing anything. That's great. Yes, thank you. So it's not us versus them. Thank you, Sherry. Yes, yes, yes. Not know-it-alls. Uh-huh. Not fixing people. Fantastic. Yes, absolutely. Let me go back to my screen here. And then we'll move to social justice teams or committees are A-R-E, not our, are empowering, central, balanced, and crucial to the life of the church, relationship builders, organized and made up of organizers, researchers, schedulers, planners, and good communicators, faithful individuals acting on their beliefs, creative. Oh, creative is a big one. I think sometimes when you do the work of social mission or social justice, people feel like they have to put their creativity up on a shelf, but that just isn't the case. I would again argue that if that the more creative we can be in our work for justice, the better. I've seen a lot of people do creative things to get the attention of people who are um, major influencers in the way of creating more just and equitable systems. Social justice committees are congregation or parish builders, not destroyers. And this is another big one. I saw in the chat, and us versus them. Um, exactly right. The work of social justice is building up your church, not an us versus them posture. And of course, it goes without saying, as diverse as possible. Whatever that, in all ways, diversity in gender and race and um, ethnicity and in perspective, as diverse as possible. And so, if you have a social justice ministry, what do you do well? Again, I'm going to invite you into the chat here. What aspects of effective social justice ministry does your team or committee embrace? So let me go back and let's see. I'm going to pause just a second, and please share with me in the chat. What things do you all do well? Or what advice for doing things well would you share with others that weren't on that slide? All right. Well, I'm going to let you all share your comments in the chats if you like. We pray well. Fantastic. Oh, here we go. Creativity is important as well as being willing to fail. Oh, thank you, Brother Ryan. Absolutely. Be always aware of the Imago Dei and always serve. Absolutely. Yes. Education, but it's been hard to transition into engaging more people. That's a true story. Um, Committed to each other, loving to the congregation. Yes, wonderful, wonderful. I love the thoughts there. I hope you all are capturing some of what's in the chat as well as some of what I'm sharing. But I'm going to continue on, and we'll keep moving through some more practical things here. So, how does an effective social justice ministry begin or continue if you already have one? I'm going to share. I'm going to share some questions because effective social justice ministry really begins with more questions than answers. So the following questions need to be answered before any action can take place. Um, and let me move through these questions. And again, let me interject here for anybody that joined late. This slide presentation, as well as the resources that I'm going to share, will be available in our Just Faith Ministries Expo booth. So you can grab a hold of them through the Accelavance platform. Just by going to our booth, our communications and marketing folks made sure they were there for you all. So, key questions for building your social justice ministry. Number one, what are the needs in your own church? Are there members of your church who are underserved, under-resourced, discriminated against, or treated unjustly? Are there environmental issues directly affecting your church members? This may sound pretty obvious, but I've actually seen in some churches where the social justice or social mission or committee or team are addressing issues that they're addressing some wonderful issues, but they're not addressing issues that are affecting the very people in their own church community. And so, a first place to start, especially if you want to bring people into your work, is to look within your own parish at what, or your congregation, about what is actually plaguing or what systems of oppression are in place that are making it impossible for people in your own church to move out of poverty or not be discriminated against, or the litany is long. Question number two, what are the primary issues affecting your community? And do you know what they are, even more importantly? It is the case because I work with small group programs. Our work at Just Faith Ministries is our big and only work is designing small group programs that equip, that educate, equip, and inspire people for the work of justice. And one of the biggest pieces of feedback that we have gotten over the years, we build in an immersion experience into every one of our programs, and people will often say that the immersion experience was the most pivotal part of the program experience for them because they had no idea what was going on even in their own community. So again, it may sound obvious, but what are the primary issues affecting your community? And if you don't know what they are, where do you start to find out? Question number three, how will you educate or continue to educate your whole church about the needs you've identified? I'd encourage you to put will you bring a video series to your church? Will you bring in a panel of people? Will you bring in a guest speaker who's an expert on that topic? Will you have a coffee and donuts and speaker session where you bring in somebody in the community who can talk about an issue? Again, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to invite you to put in the chat, what's your best ideas for educating your team or committee or your church on the issues of justice? I found there's a little bit of pause here, so I'll wait and give you a second to start writing or typing rather. Book study. Well, one more time, we're putting in the chat your best ideas for how to educate your church about a particular justice issue. I've seen churches do forums. I've seen churches do retreats. Give us your most creative ideas in the chat. Ruth said a book study. We are reading We Cry Justice. Yes, indeed. Oh, border experiences. Excellent, friend. Yeah. Go for a walk around your neighborhood. Yes. A panel with childcare and a meal. Absolutely. We found a video about racism in the community that was really well done, and we had 65 people show up. Fantastic. Invite a speaker to speak during worship. Oh, excellent ideas. Again, I hope you all will continue to pay attention to the great ideas in the chat. I'm just here to facilitate your great ideas today. So I'll share a few of mine along the way as we go. And I'm going to continue moving on with the slides so we can get them all in here. Question number 4. How do you build relationships with those affected by the issue you've identified and work in solidarity with their efforts? This is a key question, and it's a question that a lot of churches have. But what it can't look like is a fishbowl. And what I mean by that is, again, we're not helping people. We're not doing for people, and we certainly don't want our relationships to be disingenuous. But how do you build authentic relationships with the people who are directly affected by the issues? For every issue, there may be a different answer for that, but it's a really, really important question to ask. Question number 5. What is one action your congregation or parish can do together to address the injustice or the iniquity? One. Notice I have one in all capital letters, because I think if you're a social justie like me, and I am a social justie, you want to do everything everywhere all at once. Isn't that a show right now? I love the title. Social justice activists want to do everything everywhere all at once. But you simply cannot be effective that way. And so the starting point is one thing you can do really well and fully. Again, another commercial, at least from Just Faith Ministries, we have small group programs. We're getting ready to launch a program that will come out on May 15th that is called Just Action: How to Advocate and Mobilize for Justice. The topic really of this presentation. And I chose that because our director of programs, who is an extraordinary developer of programmatic material and program content, pulling together programmatic material and content, she designed this with it starts with a retreat where you will identify what one topic and issue you will do as a team with your church at the very beginning. And then you move through all of some of the best wisdom from grassroots organizers and people who have been doing church-based ministry. You'll move through the program, and it will take you sort of a practicum-y type program that will take you step by step through doing this action in your congregation. So whether you use our Just Action program or not, pick one action to start with that you can do really well. Question number 6. What are your primary goals, and what do you want the end result to be? And how will you measure success? And there should be both internal and external goals. An internal goal would be this. We want at least 25 people to show up to our Friday evening soup supper with a guest speaker. That's an internal goal. An external goal would be and whenever you can, I should have put on here, use SMART goals. An external goal might be, we're going to meet with the director of this organization by this date, and we will do this. So what are your goals? What would you like the end result to be? And how will you measure success? Number 7, what are the major steps you will need to take to reach your goal? Um, and this is really logistics. What's it going to take to get there? I will share a resource with all of you at the end that also will be in our expo booth, but it will guide you through some of those logistical questions, and it's yours to use. Number 8, who else do you need to invite to be part of the action? Neighboring churches, denominational leaders, influencers, the people affected by the issue. Who else needs to be in the room with you as you engage your congregation or your parish in this action or activity? It's a really important question because often the people that are affected by the issue are left out of the equation, and this will keep you from leaving them out. This question will help keep you from leaving those folks out. Number 9, how are you going to communicate the importance of the action or activity to the larger parish or congregation and inspire as much support and engagement as possible? In other words, in a nutshell, why would this issue matter to them? As you think about your action that you're going to be doing related to an issue, why would it matter to the people in your church? If you start out by picking an issue that is affecting people directly in your church, then you've already covered this. But if not, if it's a issue that's affecting your local community that people don't know about, how are you going to personalize it and make that issue matter to others? Because honestly, we all have enough to do during our day. There has to be a way that you articulate the issue that makes it matter to me, a busy person. Number 10, what is your plan for evaluating, debriefing, and following up with the action or activity? How do you engage the larger congregation or parish in the post project activity or input? Um, it would there are some evaluation tools out there. There's a million of them on the internet, but I would definitely grab somewhere an activity or project evaluation template and use it every time you do something. And why would you want to do that? Because you will learn things, and you will learn things that will be applicable to your next action and your next action and your next action. And then question number 11, based on what you learned, what is your next action or activity? Is there a second action step to take, a follow-up action step to take, that a continuation of the action that emerged from your first effort? What did you learn, and what is your next action or activity? I'm going to breeze quickly through some common ruts and potholes in social justice ministry. And some of you may be very familiar with these. We can't get enough people on our team or committee. Well, again, offer one of our programs. Our programs are designed to build community and inspire people to engage with social ministry. Um, Issue personal invitations. Find another program that inspires and equips people for the work of social justice. Keep inviting until you get that critical mass of 8 to 12 folks. Have a retreat or have a church offering about an issue of importance in your community and invite people into a discernment process at the end. Our priest or pastor isn't supportive of what we're doing. Involve the priest or pastor from the start, if you haven't, or if you didn't in your last project. Meet with the priest or pastor and clarify what you're trying to do and how it comes out of our scriptural call. This is a really important one. Make sure the priest or pastor knows that you are not asking them to do the work. I think sometimes there's not any kind of adversarial position that a priest or pastor has taken. It's just that they're so darn busy that if there's a perception that they're doing the work, it may seem they may seem unsupportive when actually they're not. And if all else fails, again, be creative. Don't give up on your social justice ministry. Gospel justice is the work of the church. We don't have a budget for our social justice ministry efforts. I would say most social justice teams or committees don't have a budget. So if you're feeling like that is a rut or a pothole, I would not worry about it. There are hundreds of thousands of structural change issues that you can address without ever spending a dime. We have a social justice ministry team or committee, but everyone wants to do something different. Again, maybe this is a place for the Just Action program where you have to come together and identify an issue and a topic and a specific thing that you want to accomplish together. Either way, I would suggest some way of identifying one issue that you all agree on. And maybe it looks like keeping track of everything that everybody wants to do and just doing them one at a time. But you will not be able to do the work of justice well if you are doing 6 different things at the same time. We coordinate great events and activities, but only a handful of people show up. I would just say that there are some other questions that you might want to ask yourself at the end of the event. Is what we're focused on relevant to others in the church or the community? Was there adequate and timely communications about the activity or event? Did we poll the congregation or the parish first about what issues are affecting them most or are most important to them? Or did we set a realistic participation goal? I'm Franciscan at heart, so I'm sort of a foolish optimist, and I think there should be 300 people at every social justice event that I do, but that is not a realistic goal. In church ministry, a more realistic goal may be 25 or 50 or 100 for a big event. But did you set a realistic goal to begin with? And with that, do you, Susie, have any resources we can use? Yes, I certainly do. Again, you'll find a resource packet in the Just Faith Ministries Expo exhibit booth, and it will have. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here, and I'm gonna share a few of the things that are in that, so you can get a sense of what is in that resource packet. That may come in really handy for your work for social mission or social ministry. This first page is effective social justice ministry meeting components. It outlines a couple of different meeting formats and some of the ways that you can frame them in order to get the most accomplished in your time together as a social justice committee or team, while not shortchanging prayer or visioning or having the necessary conversations that you need to have. It also has here strategies for inviting team members and leaders. And I've identified several of them there. Again, nothing replaces a personal invitation or a one-on-one visit. I need to say that out loud. Here are the questions for visioning and discernment that I just shared with you. All of those questions that I shared are right here. As you think about what action you want to do, I would answer these before you do anything else. And then here's a planning and action or event. And this is really the logistics. What's the purpose? How will your action or activity include the following? What and where will it take place? How many people are you planning for? Are you having a guest speaker? Is the event for adults only? If not, are you providing childcare? Where are you going to communicate about it? How? Who are you going to invite from the outside? What are the supplies you need? And what's the follow-up you're going to do? So that's a planning guide that is yours to use. And then I put some sample communications. We used to use, when I was in a church ministry, we use this acronym SPA, Study, Prayer, and Action. And we had a social justice corner in our church newsletter or communication, and it would have one sentence study. Maybe it would be a statistic like this: Lutheran social services and Catholic charities have joined together to educate Christians about the legal immigration process and current legislation. That was the study. Prayer: God, we pray for an end to the violence and poverty that displaces so many people. Action: very practical. Attend a faith response to immigration workshop at St. John's Lutheran. That's how you use that study, prayer, and action format really effectively in short form without overwhelming people with a lot of information and without having to create extra flyers and printing extra materials in your church communications. And then the last thing I added here was just significant dates and monthly themes. This is not comprehensive. I'm sure there are things that are missing. But, in the way of thinking about an event that you want to do in October, I would be, first of all, thinking about it now, and then looking out at October and seeing what might be relevant in terms of some of the federal holidays, the national holidays, events that are happening in the world, and those kinds of things. And so with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm just going to I'm going to ask. I actually, my office, Just Faith Ministries, is in Louisville, Kentucky, but I work remotely, and I live in Des Moines, Iowa. For Paula, who asked that question, other people have questions. Oh, thank you, Pastor Maria. I'm happy to happy to share these resources. These resources were designed to be used. So by all means, take them. The only thing that I would ask is if you're, by all means, share that resource packet with your social justice or social action teams or committees. But if you're going to share the PowerPoint, just reach out to me. I'd just like to know where that's going before it goes on. I can't think of why I wouldn't give you an okay to share it, but I'd like to at least, like I said, know where it's going. Anything else? I'm going to check the Q&A one more time. How do you mobilize church members in different socioeconomic levels for community around church? Oh, that's a great idea. Or that's a great question. Cassandra, one of the ways that I did this I worked in a church that was a 1/3 Sudanese refugee, 1/3 Southeast Asian refugee families who had come to the U.S. as refugees, and so the group had a diverse socioeconomic makeup, and I would say that the most effective thing was making sure that, first of all, the church leadership had representation of both of those, or of all, that your church leadership looks like your church community, and that your church leadership body isn't 10 white faces and one non-white face. If 1/3 of your church is Sudanese and the other third is Southeast Asian, right? So that's one, to ensure that your church leadership looks like your church. And then secondarily, to plan events where people experience each other's cultures. We did that often. Our Just Faith group one year went and attended a celebration that the Sudanese community was doing, and was just completely immersed in the culture and customs of that they brought with them to the U.S. from the Sudan. So there's definitely some ways to bridge that gap. So I appreciate that question. Yes, one more time before I go. I think our time is up, but in my last minute, let me just reiterate one more time that the slide presentation that I used with those questions and insights about what effective parish or congregational social mission or ministry looks like. The slides and the resource packet that I shared are both in our Just Faith Ministries exhibit booth through this Excellence platform. You can go to the Expo link on the left side of your computer and find us, Just Faith Ministries, and both the slide presentation and the resources are there. And with that, folks, I believe our time is up. Thank you so much for attending EAD this year. We put a lot of work into it, and I'm just so grateful. Thank you, Fran, for being in the workshop and helping me with sharing my slides. And blessings to you all in your good work for peace and justice, equity, and environmental sustainability. Thank you. Thank you.